another night, another movie, and tonight we had 1992's Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, starring Terence Knox, Paul Skerrer, Ryan Bowman and Christy Clark. I actually saw this movie before the previous one, originally. This one was actually the one that made me want to then look back on the previous film. So I've seen it a couple of times when I had it on VHS. I think I saw it when I bought this box set, but I haven't seen it since, so it's been a good number of years. But it basically continues the story from the previous movie. We're supposed to assume that Bert and Vicky, when they left with Job and Sarah, that they went on to Hemmingford, the neighbouring town, and kind of reported what had happened and stuff. Because this movie starts with these bodies being found in a basement. And oh my god, already the movie was annoying me. My main problem with this movie actually is rooted in the start of it. Because they find these adults decomposing in this cellar. And you're just kind of, well, we were told, Job said in the first movie, that Isaac and presumably a number of the older teens took the adults out to the cornfield. And that was one of my nitpicks actually with the first movie that I didn't mention last time, is that it kind of bugged me, this notion that there were no bodies anywhere, that these kids had managed to shift all the fully grown adults out into the cornfield. That kind of bugged me, but I didn't like the fact that all of a sudden we're finding these adults that have just been left in the buildings, and we're told that 50 adults are found via this news report. And it's just like, so they assume that, you know, these 50 bodies, I don't know, they don't know. You find out later that they're just like, oh, this must be, when they go into the cornfield later and they find these body parts, you're just like, oh, that must be where the rest of the town that they couldn't find were. But it just bugs me that there were these 50 bodies laying around, just conveniently handy to find. So anyway, they find these bodies. You then cut to a father and teenage son kind of driving nearby, en route to kind of Gatlin, and you find out that they have a very kind of estranged relationship where you know, the mother's moved on, she's now with somebody else, or actually I think they've split up or something, but anyway, they're separated parents. The son doesn't often see his dad, so he calls him by name and stuff like that, which pisses off the dad. But the dad is a reporter, so he then finds out about this story in Gatlin, and he wants to investigate. So it's then following him as he kind of tries to dig up questions and that, because all the kids from Gatlin have been shipped to the neighbouring town of Hemmingford and essentially put into like foster homes with all the adults there. And one of them, Micah, played by Ryan Bowman, he becomes possessed by he who walks behind the rose, and essentially turns into Isaac, minus the voice. He has the whole scowl going on and the very dramatic movements, and I was just, you could have put John Franklin there and it wouldn't have been much different. And in a way it was kind of cool, but at the same time I was kind of wishing Isaac was there, and in the same way I wanted this guy to do something completely different. So I was kind of torn on that. But so Micah leads the kids to start killing adults in Hemmingford, and kind of Danny, the reporter's son, played by Paul Skerrer, he kind of ends up getting, because he was staying at the place where Micah was, he becomes friends with him and gets sucked into that kind of world more out of curiosity, while at the same time being turned on by this chick, local chick, that he starts having a kind of a relationship with. So you're basically following while the kids are killing the adults in a much gorier fashion than in the first movie. I mean, there's one point where you're in the church and Micah has this like wooden voodoo doll and he's like scratching into it with a knife, and one of the congregation kind of starts bleeding from his nose and his ears and stuff. I assume the budget was a lot bigger for this movie because it is a lot. There are a lot more effects in it. Now, the thing, but it's not over the. Well, it is over the top, but it's not constant. There's still a lot of quiet moments, a lot of moments when not much happens, but not in a bad way. There's this batty old woman who's like, I warned her about these kids, blah blah blah. And of course they don't like her, so they trap her under a house and they drop the whole house on her. And they totally go for that, like, Wizard of Oz, feet sticking out thing. There's this, her sister, who's like, I warned you all about them. The kids take over her remote, her electric wheelchair. And she dies that way, and that was kind of funny. But an interesting key point about this movie is something that pissed me off at the end of the first movie, again that I didn't mention, is that Bert was happy to jump to the conclusion when, at the end, when like a storm starts to pick up and is blowing all the corn and everything, he happily goes, oh, how do you kill the monster? Now this was a guy who worked in medicine, and he just happily went, oh yeah, let's kill the monster. Even though he'd not really had any reason to believe there was anything supernatural, paranormal, whatever, before that. In this movie, you have this guy kind of meet up with John, the reporter, and this a Native American guy called Frank Red Bear. And he actually, other than being a really cool character, albeit rather, you know, cheesy and cliched, he reminded me a lot of Jeff Goldblum. But he was a good character, but he helped bring, because they find this last year's harvest of corn in this barn, and he's all like, oh, this mould on it, it's like dangerous and it can cause hallucinations in kids. So they're trying to put a scientific spin on it, which I thought was kind of interesting. They weren't outrightly going, it's paranormal. I mean, there is still that thing where, you know, you see the Force leave Micah later on. But it's nice that they try to find that kind of rational explanation, if you will. And oh my god, I've watched far too much X-Files. But it is nice that they go for that, as opposed, and it did tick me off with Bert in the first movie, when he was just like, oh yeah, whatever, just how do you kill it? How do you kill the corn? So, yeah, this movie is a lot more enjoyable. I actually prefer it over the first movie, even though I have problems continuity-wise. I always hate when they keep saying, oh, it happened here. And it didn't, it happened in the next town over, you know, 20 miles away. It's kind of like, well, I mean, I know it's a neighbouring town and that, so you still feel like it's part, and you probably know that community and that, and in a way it is part of your home. But it made you feel like the adults were from Gatlin, and it's like, oh no, because all those ones got killed. But I really enjoy this movie. The acting in it is a lot better, but for a movie that's called Children of the Corn, there are actually barely any children. They are all teenagers. I think there was all of 2 children, you know, younger than 12. And one of them, and talking about X-Files, one of them, a little girl, had a talking dolly that went, "I want to play." And I was like, no, 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 you can't do the whole Chucky kind of, Chingadol kind of fucking, I guess they just had to throw it in there, but I was just, and considering Stephen King wrote the evil talking doll episode of the X-Files, as far as I know he didn't have any involvement. I mean, obviously because the first movie was based on his short story. As far as I know, he had nothing to do with the second movie. So I just, and of course this was before his episode of the X-Files, but it just made me go, oh dear God, really? But yeah, no, it's mainly teenagers of the Corn. And I know the idea is that they're still, you know, not adults, but at the end of the day, I have to put the better acting down to the fact that there was no annoying children narrating the movie and stuff. But yeah, no, I just enjoyed this movie a lot more. Although I enjoyed the lack of visual stimulation in the first one, it works in this movie. I can't imagine it not being in this movie, and it could just be that I saw this one first. I don't know. I still really like the first one, but I do prefer this one. So please, if you enjoy the first one, again, if you're after a good kind of just scary children horror movie, it's flawed. Do not get me wrong, it is not a perfect movie. It is by no means a perfect horror movie. Personally, I just find it fun. And a good 90 minutes watch. So if you get the chance, do check out 1992's Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice. We'll be back again tomorrow with Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest. But for now, this is Sketch, signing out.